Hello and welcome to Statewide Ohio's May statewide meeting. I'm Kyle Herman, the executive director, the only full-time employee, but we're joined today by many of our volunteers, many of our volunteer leads, as well as some of our part-time organizers and some of our new interns and many volunteers and many hopefully future volunteers. And many of you are already probably familiar with ranked choice voting is, but it's a simple upgrade to the way we vote that's already used in Maine and Alaska, where instead of just picking one candidate, you rank your choices first, second, third, and so forth. And then if no one wins a majority, then whoever is in last place is eliminated. If you voted for them, then your vote will simply transfer to your next choice. We call it an instant runoff because it's just like the runoff elections that they have in other states like Georgia in order to get a majority. But instead of having an entire new wasteful election, we already know who your backup choices are. So your vote can just transfer to your next choice. And that solves a huge problem we have here in Ohio where we don't require a majority to win. So if more than two candidates run, then somebody can win with 30 or 40% of the vote, even if 60 or 70% voted against them. And so that's why we created Ranked Vote Ohio as Ohio's only nonpartisan nonprofit for ranked choice voting. We are trying to bring ranked choice voting to Ohio through education, organization, and mobilization. The biggest barrier that we have is most people just don't know that a better way to vote exists. And so we're trying to increase public awareness and support, and that will help us get to the point where we'll be able to actually build a viable campaign. But in order to do that, we need people, we need money, and we need endorsements. We're following the ranked choice voting playbook. Another way of saying that is we need doers, donors, and door openers in order for us to get all Ohioans on board in order to do a ballot initiative for ranked choice voting. And so we need your help in order to eventually get to the point where we can launch a public campaign for local and or statewide ballot initiatives. And so today, we are asking you to help us take action. We'll have more details later on, but we have links right there near the top of the agenda for how you can take action to help us. You can sign and share our online petition, you can volunteer, and you can also donate. Any amount would be helpful if you could chip in. But for today's meeting, I'm very excited that we will be talking with the new mayor-elect of Akron, Ohio, Shammas Malik. And then after that, we will be introducing our new interns to you. And then Kristen Byrice, our voter advocacy liaison, will be talking about how the Vote No in August campaign is so important for our ability to bring ranked choice voting to Ohio. And then we'll be talking about an opportunity we have to bring ranked choice voting to University Heights, right outside of Cleveland, this year, and ways that you can help with that. So we have a big agenda, but I'm really excited to jump right in with the new presumptive mayor of Akron, Shammas Malik. Thank you for joining us, Shammas.
Thanks for having me, Kyle. Hi, everybody.
So Shammas, congrats on your win in the primary for mayor of Akron. And since you don't have a challenger in the fall, you are already the presumptive mayor-elect, which is amazing. And also full disclosure to our audience, you and I have been friends since before you were elected to city council back in 2019. And then you actually became the first elected official in Ohio to publicly endorse Ranked Vote Ohio after we formed in 2020. So could you tell us about why you were so quick to support instant runoffs with ranked choice voting?
Sure. Like I said, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for listening for a few minutes, and appreciate the invite to talk, Kyle. I think one of the things that has been clear to me for the last few years since, before I ran for office, I was in city government as a lawyer, is that people have lost trust in government at every level, right? At the federal level, really going back decades to Vietnam and the Iraq War and so many other things. At the state level, we've seen scandal after scandal after scandal. It's hard to keep track of the scandals. And then at the local level, folks see local governments that, aren't terribly effective at delivering the basic services that they're being asked to, like safety and education. And so as many steps as we can take to improve trust and get more people involved in the process and get people more excited about the process, I think are better. And, I think ranked choice voting is part of that kind of good governance model, right? Akron is a pretty blue city, but we have these very intense like primary battles. And we also have like a large number of Republicans. We have like 30% of the community are Republicans who like really don't feel like they have a voice in that process either, especially, in the municipal election. So, when Kyle brought it up, it's like, look, this is a pretty straightforward thing. It's worked in other places. And so this is, something we should subscribe to.
Thanks, Shammas. And then for your primary this year, it was a 7-way race. But since Ohio's current system limits voters to only one choice and doesn't require a majority to win, it causes voters to agonize a lot about how to use their one vote. And you actually won with 43%, which was way closer to the 50% than I think anyone expected from a 7-way race. But having been through this crowded primary yourself, how do you think it would have been better if Akron had instant runoffs with ranked choice voting?
Absolutely. So we have Kyle a little bit to blame for that 43% because he was out there knocking on doors for us, full disclosure. But, the thing that I'll get into the weeds just a little bit here because I think it actually is kind of interesting. So we had 7 people and 2 were kind of not that serious candidates, with all due respect to them. They're nice people, good people, but they weren't that serious candidates. So then you had 5 people, all of whom had, some degree of significant following and kind of a significant campaign. And so in Akron, we have May partisan primaries, right? And then a November general election, but no Republican or independent filed to run in November. So the May election was the election, right? Our primaries used to be in September, but we moved them back because September was really way too tight of a turnaround in order to actually get like the absentee and especially military overseas ballots ready for November. There are downsides to having it in May, right? You really can't canvass with volunteers before like March because of how cold it is in our beautiful state. But in any case, so we're looking at this May primary. And again, you have 7 people, 5 like pretty serious candidates. And we're sitting there and there were really three or four, but kind of 3 candidates who really represented change, who were talking about change, who were talking about similar things, and who, we disagree here and there, but we were mostly talking about the same thing. And then we had 1 or 2 people who really kind of were talking about status quo or maintaining things the way they were. And, as we went to the election, it was really hard to tell like how that was going to play out. And we really, several of us who really were pushing this change message were concerned and we're saying, the 3 of us could get, 60% of the vote and still lose if we're splitting that vote 3 ways. And someone else can squeak by with like 35, 36, 37% of the vote. And so, that was something that we talked about a lot. And we even, talked about it openly. Ultimately, there were a lot of questions in the debates, like who would you support if you weren't in the race, or like who would you want to work for if you weren't in the race, or that kind of thing. And it was very clear that like I felt like I was like everybody's second choice. And ultimately, like we did good enough that it wasn't a concern. But I think it was a real question that voters were asking themselves in the last few weeks. And like I think there were probably some voters who might have wanted to vote for Tara Mosley or Mark Greer, who probably voted for me at the end of the day because they said, look, like, Shammas is the most competitive person against the establishment person. That's just a reality. And so we should let people have better choices.
Thanks, Shammas. And your win was historic because you're only 32 years old and you're the first person of color to be elected the mayor of Akron, which is Ohio's 5th largest city. So were there people who you think were discouraged from running, who were basically told to wait their turn in this or any other races? And do you think more people from underrepresented groups like young people, people of color, and women would be empowered to run without being told to wait their turn if we had ranked choice voting?
I think there is like a concern that, the reality is that money and kind of name recognition play way too much of a part in our elections. And you have to be able to raise a lot of money just to get your name out there, right? And that was a big hump that I faced. And we combated it by really having a twofold strategy by getting out there as quickly as possible out on the field and talking to people, but also on like starting to fundraise as early as possible and just building a really grassroots donor network. But I do think that for candidates who might not be able to devote as much time or all those kinds of things, I think that removing those barriers to entry and saying if there's someone who again would be like everybody's second choice or could pick up more steam like that, I think that it's or that voting for them doesn't seem like a waste, right? Of a vote because they're not, likely to succeed. I think that helps those candidates. And again, and the other piece is like it's hard to tell how this all will break out, right? And so often people think, well, that's not going to be in my interest or that kind of thing. And it's like it's hard to play out. Like ultimately, it's hard to poll these races. It's hard to get a very solid feel. So it's like let's give people the option to, to have their voice heard in more ways than one.
Great. And as we've talked, ranked choice voting isn't just about the outcome of elections, it's about changing the incentives for campaigning and governing. And we've seen in places that have ranked choice voting already that campaigns tend to be less negative because candidates are less likely to attack each other if they still want to be voters' second choice if they can't be their first. And they're more likely to work for the common good to win a majority of support. And the race that you just finished, it got pretty contentious. Do you think that it would have been less negative with ranked choice voting?
Well, I would say two things. I would say, like, first of all, the point that you're making is true in the sense that, like, the folks who were running, who really were talking about change, like, none of us really attacked each other. In part, I think, because folks recognize that, these are people who, they're really deciding between amongst the three of us, and anything might shift how that goes. But it did get kind of negative towards the end. One of the establishment candidates really came after me because it was clear that I was in the lead. I don't know if ranked choice voting honestly would have solved that, but I think it would cause people to take a second or third look at it. And to reconsider. So, maybe it would help.
Fair. Most elected officials, after they win an election, they don't really show interest in changing the system because the system worked for them and the system ended up working out for you. Yeah. So you just won your election comfortably. You have the advantage of incumbency. Why go out on a limb now and advocate for changing the system with ranked choice voting? And what would you say to other elected officials or other candidates who might be skeptical about ranked choice voting because they might question how it affects them personally?
Well, I answered the question a little bit in terms of, elected officials. Like, it's hard to predict what will help or hurt you. I think the best thing is to do what is in the voters' interests, and then, you will see the results and people will buy into that. But I guess the point that I would make, and I'm going to kind of cannibalize what I think is your next question, Kyle, which is that one of the points the Akron Beacon Journal made in the weeks leading up to the election was that there was a lot of interest around this election, but that functionally, the Democratic primary was the whole election. And so there's a lot of people who didn't feel like they wanted to be part of the race and said, maybe we should have nonpartisan elections. And so everyone feels like they're a part of it. Whether you do this by ranked choice voting or whether you have a nonpartisan election or whether you just have a primary that's a lot closer to a general, whichever way you do that, I think we have to make sure that more people feel like they're a part of the conversation, because like it was so frustrating to me in March. We were spending all of our time trying to tell people about the race, And like, it wasn't until the last few weeks before May 2nd that people really started tuning in. And I was like, look, if we have a general election in November, if the top two people advance to November, we could have this great civic debate all summer. And like, we would have done a whole lot better than 43%. And so, I think it's about how you get people more engaged in the process and the system. And I think that's another reason why ranked choice vote makes sense.
Exactly. And as we talked about before with the Akron Beacon Journal endorsed you, but it also wrote an editorial saying that Akron should move to nonpartisan primaries. But realistically, the point that we actually wanted to make to the Akron Beacon Journal was that nonpartisan elections are really only possible if you have a ranked choice voting mechanism there in order to prevent the type of vote splitting from having a lot of candidates. And so, imagine if even instead of having the top two, you could have the top four, top five candidates narrowed through the primary process, and then have a choice of 4 or 5 in November without having the vote splitting problem. And you could actually still give people more choices than just 2, but still have a majority to win. We're going to talk later. I see some questions coming in through the chat. Everyone, please do raise your hand if you want to ask a question or flag it in the chat. But I have one last question. We're going to talk later in this meeting about how the Ohio State House just created a special election in August to force us to vote on whether to make citizen-led ballot initiatives basically impossible to pass. And we're all voting no because the proposed amendment would basically prevent Ohio from having a ballot initiative for ranked choice voting. And Shammas, we were wondering, from your perspective as a local elected official, do you have thoughts on the August special election and what the State House is trying to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a pretty transparent attempt to make it harder to, make sure abortion rights are protected in the state constitution, and to just, make it difficult for us to have that direct democracy route, which is really at this point one of the only routes, given how gerrymandered the State House is and how much corruption plays into this. It's so cynical because so many of these people just spent the last year talking about how August elections are a waste of money, and now here they are with an August election when it suits them. It's hard to like even express, it would be funny if it wasn't like a huge assault on our democracy. But I think voters are going to see through it, right? I think voters across the board are going to see through it. And I think people, they don't want to do something that is going to take choices away from them or disadvantage them. And that's the reality of what these attacks on citizen-led amendment campaigns are. So I think we all have to oppose it in August, and we all have to, support reproductive rights on the ballot in November. But again, these are opportunities. These are opportunities to get people more involved in the process and to explain to people why we need to improve our elections. Ranked choice voting is one way of doing that.
Thanks, Shammas. We want to open it up to questions now. I had a couple private messages come in the chat, but I think we ended up touching on them through our lines of questioning. But please do raise your hand or put in the chat if you have any questions. And Shammas, if there's anything else you want to add while you have the floor, go for it.
Sure. Just, would love to hear any questions that folks have. But, Will in the chat has this point about, a large majority of congressional seats are safe seats. And so things are decided in the primaries. Ranked choice voting would definitely help with that. Andrew, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, Shammas. Could you comment about statewide turnout in the May primary?
Well, I don't think that I don't have the figures in the May primary. In Akron, it was decent. It wasn't amazing, but it was decent. But we did an awful lot of work, right? We had 7 campaigns, and a couple of those campaigns were running pretty good field programs, and couple of those campaigns are spending a lot of money, telling people about the election. But again, like what I was so excited about was if we could continue this energy to November, we could get a lot more people engaged who are not typically engaged, right? When I ran for council, and sorry, I'm getting a little bit off because I don't have the answer to your question, Andrew, but when I ran for council in 2019, I knocked on all the doors in my ward 3 times, and volunteers did another 2 times. When I ran for mayor, we did as a whole campaign knock on about 3/4 of the doors in our target, right? So there's just the reality is when you have less time to do that, you have less time to talk to voters, less time to get people to turn out.
Thanks, Andrew. Susan?
Hi, guys. I have a question. I have a good friend. He's a retired, super intelligent researcher from Ohio State, and he is considering a run for city council, and he's brilliant. I would really like to see him run. He has been asked not to run, because it would take votes away from someone else that this inner circle thinks actually has a better chance of beating an incumbent. It makes my heart hurt to think that he might not run. What advice would you give to him?
I think that everybody has to make their own decision for themselves. And if it's really in somebody's heart to run, then they should. And, the rest is the rest. None of us want to be in the situation where we're playing like, I don't want to offend anybody who feels differently, but, a spoiler in the sense that like Ralph Nader kind of did in 2000, right? Nobody, I think, wants that. Again, that's where ranked choice voting can help. But, there were 2 people in my race who, again, I had very similar views to, and who I worried, that people who were voting for them might vote for me if they weren't in the race. And absent that, all 3 of us might lose to a more establishment person. And I had very candid conversations with them, but ultimately it was like, look, like we all have to do what we feel is most appropriate. We're all running because we have a vision. And, if someone has a vision, if someone feels very strongly, they should go do that. Voters will make the decision. Like that's the ultimate point of all of this. Voters will make the decision. Let's trust voters to make those decisions.
Thanks,
Makes
Shammas.
sense. Yep. Thank you.
I think that's a great point to end on is, yes, let's let voters make a decision, trust them to make a decision, but give them the tool we see as ranked choice voting so that they can make a majority decision together. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We also had a couple mentions in the chat about how a lot of counties and cities didn't have primaries this year. So statewide turnout, you can't really assess because a lot of voters didn't even have the option. Will, do you have one last question?
I'll say, further to that point was, the same thing, probably, I think back in 2012, maybe even 2008, John Kasich wanted to make a run for president. And he was told by the establishment, no, don't run. You're going to split the vote. Here's what you should do instead. You should run for governor. Yeah, it was 2008. You know why? Because he was told, oh, it's easier to run from, the governor position. Well, then the 2 front runners were Senator McCain and Senator Obama, not governors. So, I really think that, again, I'll say what I said in the chat. It is a strong argument for ranked choice voting, because we always hear this, oh, you're going to split the vote. You're going to split the vote. And I'm honestly, it's a sad reality. I hate that it's a reality, but I'm also tired of that having to be an argument that has to be made. If people want to run, they should be able to run.
Yeah.
Thanks for making that point, Will. Thank you for joining us, Shammas. We're going to move on with our agenda and introduce our new interns. So for those interns on the call, please raise your hands so that I can call on you and let us know where you're from, what school you go to, and where you're from. Let us know the city and also the regional chapter or chapters that you're going to be working with. Go ahead, Jacob.
Hi, my name's Jacob Hall. I attend Kyle's alma mater of Ohio Wesleyan University. I had the pleasure of meeting him back in, I think, December, and quickly hitched myself to the Rank the Vote Ohio mission. I'm going to be working, I believe it's Northeast Ohio is I think the one I'm officially under.
Maybe Northwest and North Central, because
yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Northwest, North Central. Sorry. Yeah, I think that's all it.
Thanks, Jacob. Corey.
Hi, everyone. My name's Corey Virag. So I'm up in Akron, so I'll be working with the Northeast Ohio chapter. And I go to school at Ohio State, about to start my 3rd year, study political science. So yeah, happy to be here. Hope to meet everyone soon.
Thanks, Corey. Haley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haley. I'm also in Akron, so I'll be in the Northeast Ohio region. I go to Ohio State, and I am an incoming 2nd year sociology major. So I'm super excited to be here involved with Rank the Vote this summer.
Thanks, Haley. Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah. I go to Ohio State. I will be a 3rd year. I'm from Vanderbilt, Ohio, which is Northwest Ohio, and I major in political science and English, and I'm glad to be here to work with you all.
Thank you, Sarah. Callum.
Hi, my name is Callum Murphy. I'm from Delaware, Ohio, so I'll be working with the Central Ohio region, and I go to Ohio State. I'm going to be a 3rd year sociology major. I'm really excited to be working with this organization.
Thanks. We're excited to have you. We're excited to have all of you. And we do have more interns who are starting over the next couple of weeks. Some of them are also out with our regional organizers right now, collecting signups. They're all going to be helping our regional chapters grow. We have the link for our regional chapters in the chat, in the agenda, and you can also find it in the chat so you can help them and our organizers grow our chapters. Because we have a big goal to reach by July 1st of getting 10,000 supporters to show our viability. And we're at over 7,500 the last we checked. So we only have about 2,500 support more that we need to reach our goal. You can help us by signing and sharing the petition that Andy just put in the chat, or getting more involved with our regional chapters. But we are actually still trying to hire as many interns as we can. We're giving them small stipends in order to help cover travel and expenses, and we would appreciate your help donating to help us to be able to do that. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Denise Riley, who is our Chief Operating Officer and also the head of our fundraising team. Denise?
Hello, Kyle, you said most of what I was going to say. We have grown by leaps and bounds, and with that growth have come new opportunities. These opportunities will exponentially increase our growth and push us closer to ranked choice voting as a reality for Ohioans. These opportunities are also going to cost us money. If you could chip in right now and donate, any amount would help, but also if you can make it monthly, even just, the amount for a cup of coffee per month goes a long way to help us out. If you can't donate, how about hosting a house party? You provide the space, we'll provide the speaker. You can do things like an ice cream social and we can rank ice cream, or you can do a beer party and we can rank different kinds of beer. There are directions right here as to how people go about setting up a house party, and we are very happy to help you out. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Denise. And I just want to add to that, the amount of money that we're able to raise is really important so that we can pay for all these expenses, but also as important for our overall viability is the number of people who are donating. So even if you're only able to give $5, it really helps us to show that we do have a grassroots support if you're able to give any amount at all. So thank you everyone for chipping in and supporting us. And also Will mentioned in the chat that you can also do birthday fundraisers on Facebook, which we have 2 active right now. Next, we have Kristen Byrice, our voter advocacy liaison, who is now also our volunteer lead for the Vote No in August campaign, giving us an update on this August 8th election. Kristen.
Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. And I'm not excited to be talking about this topic, but I am excited to be presenting for all of you so I can help share some information and how we're going to be moving forward with supporting the Vote No campaign and what that means for us. And even if it were to pass, what would happen, what it is. I'm going to educate you today on what it is for those of you who don't know as well. Let me pull up my slides here. So we do have August 8th special election. And for those of you who don't know, this special election is just one thing on the ballot. And that is this proposal right here, which is for constitutional amendments. So if we move forward with ranked choice voting, we are building grassroots capacity right now to potentially put an amendment on the ballot in the next year, so that we can have a ballot initiative go through, change our constitution, and allow ranked choice voting. So this directly impacts what we are working on for ranked choice voting in Ohio. This actual amendment would, there's 3 different pieces to the amendment in the language, and this is the official language that was just approved this week for public, and this is what will be on your ballot in August when you vote on August 8th. There are 3 different pieces to it. The first piece is that it would require any ballot amendment or anything on the ballot that's a citizen initiative would require at least 60%. Right now, it's only 50% plus 1. So right now it's majority rules. It's exactly what we are fighting for with all of our elections in the state of Ohio is majority rules. So this would change it from majority rule to 60%, which now means 40% of the voters would actually change what would happen. That means minority rule. 40% can defeat it and we're done. So this is not what we are advocating for at Rank the Vote Ohio. We are advocating for majority rule. And this would change how many votes we would need to get to pass ranked choice voting in the state of Ohio. 60% is a lot harder to get than 50 plus 1. Most of the initiatives that have passed in this state have passed through less than 60%. And in fact, just in case you didn't know, we've had 72 ballot initiatives pass through this state, or actually be on the ballot in this state, and only 19 of them have ever passed. So it's not like it's easy to get these through to begin with. 60% makes it harder for us to get any ballot initiative through. The second piece of this is that it would require any initiative to have 5% of eligible voters in every county. Right now, we would need 5% in 44 counties. The biggest change to this piece is, and this is the part that's not on this language on your ballot, it's not going to tell you what we currently have. Currently, we have to get 10% of the entire state, which is 412,000 that we would have to get people to sign petitions. And that's based on the last governor election. Same thing, we still are required at this point to get 44 counties, and you have to get 5% of the previous governor election. So how many people voted in the last gubernatorial election in your county? We would have to get 5% of that in 44 of the counties signed on a petition in order to get our initiative onto the ballot. The change in this is that it's now 5% of eligible voters. Not just that we have to get double the counties, we have to get every single county in the state. So that alone is hard. There are rural counties in the state. We're trying to get 5% of the voters, covers a huge amount of area, and it's hard to reach that amount to begin with, let alone having to get it in every single county. The biggest change, though, is that 5% of eligible voters changes every single day. There's nothing in the language that I know of that states at what date or when is that eligible voter number. So it's a moving target. We don't know. It might be 30 days before. Okay, if it's 30 days before, we have to turn in our ballot language before that. How do we know how many people are going to be registered to vote in any district, in any county, in this state on any given day? Right now, we can do that because we can see that on a gubernatorial election, we can go by that's how many people voted then. That's our number we have to reach for our ballot initiative. It's going to now be a moving target. If this goes through, we will now have a moving target and not be able to accurately predict how many signatures we are going to need from all 88 counties in order to pass an initiative. So this is going to make it extra hard for us moving forward. The third piece of the proposal here is that we'll need additional signatures. So right now we have a 10-day, what's called a cure period. And that cure period is 10 days after we submit our petitions. They've reviewed it, or actually they've reviewed it, and then they give us 10 days to say, oh, we didn't have enough signatures. We can come back and get more. What happens is a lot of the times people move. So when they check the list of people who registered, they may have moved to a different part of the state or another state, and now that signature is no longer valid. So we would have to get another signature to replace it. This happens very frequently in all kinds of petitions. And right now we have 10 days to go back and say, oh, we had this many people who moved or something happened and their signature is no longer valid. We have to go get some more. And we have 10 days to go out there. Even 10 days, it's hard sometimes to get that. You have to go kick butt, get out on the street, get in the field and go get signatures like immediately and run fast to get that done and get those in to make it legit. Generally, people who go out and do this, we get extras. We always are looking for extras. We want to overdo it. So just in case, so we don't have to go back, and we do everything we can not to have to go back and get signatures. This would actually remove that cure period. There's not even a chance to correct signatures. There's no way we can even go back. So we now have to like double how many signatures we want. Normally we would do a little bit of extra, maybe 10%, 20% extra. Now we're having to like double our signatures in order to make sure we have valid signatures, even when people move, when they shift counties, when they shift areas. We have to go get that many more signatures in order to guarantee that we have enough, because we have no chance to correct that. All three of these changes to our Constitution would mean a much harder campaign for us to get ranked choice voting on the ballot. Like this is just getting it on the ballot and then getting it passed, let alone, the 60% is one big piece of it. And that's the thing everybody talks about. What they're not talking about is how much harder it would be behind the scenes to even get it on the ballot, let alone get the 60% to pass. So that is what we're looking at here as we move forward in this. Our goal, and me as the lead, my goal with our organization, Rank the Vote Ohio, is to educate our supporters on what this initiative means for ranked choice voting and what it would mean for us in the future to run any kind of ballot initiative to get it on there. So we are going to be educating about this. We're going to wrap this into the work that we're doing already canvassing. So all of you, all the interns that are here, all of our organizers, I'm going to try and provide you with educational materials that we can pass out. So as people ask us and as we talk about it and we wrap it in, we can give people information so that they know what it's about. We're also going to be doing social media campaign. It won't be a big portion of our social media that we put out there, but we will be continuing to push education on what this means for the state of Ohio for ballot initiatives in the future. And then this campaign, for the Vote No campaign in August, we are encouraging Vote No because it aligns with our goals. Our goal is to protect majority rule. The ballot initiative, this amendment would actually make it minority rule. So we're voting no because it protects majority. We want to protect majority rule. We're voting no because we want to protect our rights as citizens to change the Constitution. We want the citizens of this state to be able to make that decision. And we're encouraging no because we protect the choice and voice in constitutional matters of Ohio, as well as in other legislation across the state. We want to make sure your voice is heard. And with 60% having to win, voices are not going to be heard. And it will have less choices. People won't be able to because we won't be able to choose things from our Constitution if this passes to change in the future. So this will make it very difficult and almost impossible. So we are supporting, we've signed on as an organization to support the Vote No in August campaign. We are going to be putting this kind of a thing out there, protect majority rule. We are all about protecting majority rule here. We are 50+1 in every single race, as well as every single ballot initiative that's on. We want majority rule, not minority rule. And here are some key dates for you to understand. So if you would like to also join us in this and go to the polls and vote no, we are encouraging you to take a look at these dates. Make sure your voter registration is in, that you are a registered voter. Check on the Secretary of State website to make sure you're registered. Vote July 10th is when registration is due. Early voting begins July 11th. If you're going to vote absentee, keep in mind voter ID from the state-issued voter ID or state-issued IDs are required to vote in person now. If you do not have one, I recommend getting a ballot request in ASAP. You can do that right now. I have links in the agenda for you to do that. I would get that in by July 11th so that you have plenty of time. They don't start sending them out till after July 11th. So get your request in by the 11th so you can get your ballot back and send it in time. And election day is August 11th. So this is what we are working towards. We're going to add this in and wrap this into our messaging this summer. We're going to be talking about how we want majority rule in this state, which is a part of our messaging anyway. So we just keep talking about that. And we talk about it in terms of the August election as well. I do see—
Quick correction. You said August 11th. That's August 8th.
Or August 8th, sorry. Yes, August 8th is the election. Sorry. I do see a couple of questions up here. Andrew?
Thanks, Kristen. Can you hear me? That was a great presentation. I'd just like to frame my question here so you know where I'm coming from. When I joined Rank the Vote here with Kyle, one of the things that I liked that he really did in our training was this elevator conversation. And I just wanted to let you know that I attended a Common Cause webinar on the issue that you just covered last week. And during the webinar, Kristen, they just buried us with handouts and documents. And so I'm sitting in my office thinking to myself, how can I distill this all down to Kyle's elevator conversation? And then so that's the first part of my question. And then the second part of it is, because sometimes you might be at the grocery store talking to somebody, you don't have a time, to go into a slide presentation with them, that kind of thing. The second part is during the chat in the Common Cause webinar, they had just came off the action down in Columbus, and they were showing all the pictures, and that was really great. But some people in the chat said, I don't understand one person, one vote.
Right.
Don't we have that now? How would this take one person, one vote away from us? And people, I think what we need to do going forward is we need to have meetings with little breakout groups so we can practice our talking points and answers to questions like that, because a lot of people had trouble wrapping their mind around that. So I'll end there. Thanks.
And that's why I'm encouraging us as ranked choice voting to talk about it as a majority rules. It's ending majority rule in the state of Ohio for ballot initiatives, which I think is much easier to attach to. And it also aligns with our messaging to begin with. So if we're talking about majority rules and we keep that message up in front, that is actually how I think we're going to get people to understand this issue. They are on the Vote No in August campaign, which we've signed on to. One person, one vote is their tagline. We are trying not to promote that too much because we're getting the same thing. People do not understand it. I don't have an easy explanation for it. I can say that for me, it's more of a weighted thing when you have 40% of the vote can choose whether something passes or fails. Now you have a weighted vote on the minority of the people voting, which gives them more power in their vote than the majority of the people. So again, for me, it's all about majority rules, and that's the languaging I think we need to be using as we are talking about this in terms of ranked choice voting.
Thanks, Kristen. I'm glad to hear that. We're going to sort of de-emphasize that tagline. Thank you.
I'm going to try to get us some materials in that respect. I'm not sure if I'll be able to, because there are actually a ton of materials available with the other one. And so I'm not sure if we'll be able to get any from the statewide campaign that way, but I'm going to try and get us something that we can use. So thank you for bringing that up, Andrew. Mark, what's your question there?
So I guess I'm thinking of it from what's the other side? Like they have to make this argument somehow in the affirmative to take away the ability for ballot initiatives to do that. I mean, what even is the talking point they have to push? So it really is just, like, I don't understand what's their argument, that they want less voice for people, or they want less people to have the ability to talk. So for me, I guess
protect us from foreign interests, but this was bankrolled by an out-of-state donor anyway.
There's several different messages that I've heard. I've heard that protecting us from foreign interests, as well as there's also, we want more people to be able to say they do or don't want something. So we give more power to the people by increasing the number. The actual ballot language, one of the things that people have been talking about on the ballot language is that it says it elevates the standard to qualify. So they're using that as kind of a thing, Mark, to say we're elevating the standards. We're making the standards better. We're increasing the number in order to make it more like people really have to want it in order for it to go through. That's the messaging that they're putting through on the Vote Yes campaign. There are going to be others. A lot of people are tying it to specific issues. We are not. We are nonpartisan. We have no other issues. We just want democracy in this state to be a majority rules. And go ahead. I think you had more to say, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, the main reason I was asking along those lines is because it really is just a turnout game to get people to know something is happening in August at all. Because I mean, that's just the arguments they have are really thin and like obviously, tilted for specific reasons. So yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't like, I wanted to make sure I had my ducks in a row if I was approached by somebody on the other side, but I also didn't know how they could be arguing this really.
They are tying it also to the ballot initiative that'll be on in November. So there's going to be some language, I think, coming out on that as well. We personally cannot tie ourselves to that initiative in any way, shape, or form. So.
Right. No, I understand. I was just wanting to have my ducks in a row for if I did find an opposing person. But thank you.
It's not about the ballot initiative in November. I really don't think it should be about the ballot initiative in November. It should be about we are going to actually lose power and voice in this state as citizens and lose access to our own constitution if this passes. And that for us is a challenge. So
just simply unacceptable.
Correct.
We would also become only the second state that would require greater than a simple majority to amend our state constitutions.
Yeah.
In 49 other states, 48 other states, and right now including Ohio, in 48 other states, you only need a simple majority to amend the state constitution from a ballot initiative. However, there are a lot of states that actually don't have a ballot initiative process like Ohio does. So that is a caveat there, but it is still worth mentioning that it only Florida requires a supermajority to amend its state constitution at the moment. So it's not like we're joining other states in this. Now you can argue different logical fallacies all we want, but like appeal to tradition fallacy, but it's just a stat worth keeping in mind.
Thank you, Will. Alexander.
I have tried to reach out to the Vote No people to try to get involved, and I have been unsuccessful. Do you have any contact information?
So as far as I know, voteknoinaugust.org is the website where they are taking names. I've also signed up on that website and I have not gotten anything via email yet. We are part of Ohio Voter Rights Coalition. I've been getting my information through them. And that's where I'm getting it right now. I'll be talking about it all summer long. Feel free to reach out to me. If somebody wants to drop my Rank the Vote Ohio email address in the chat, you're welcome to reach out to me. I will be working on this all summer long, but I do expect there will be individual organizations like ours. There's 240 some organizations that are going to be working on this issue this summer. And we are one of them. So I would say going through us and other organizations is going to be the best way to get the information. But do sign up on voteknoinaugust.org. And as soon as they start sending out information, you'll get whatever they're putting out to the public that way. Jim.
One comment I've heard is that it should be hard to change a constitution, and that by passing this initiative would help protect the Constitution.
Yes, that is one of the arguments that's out there as well. It should be hard. It is hard. It already is hard. So what they don't say is that it's already a very difficult process. We've been working on this since 2020. And because we have to have so much grassroots power, we have to have so much finances behind it, and we need so many endorsements. Like, we've been working on this since 2020. I've been part of this campaign since day one, or part of this organization since day one. And we've been working hard since the day one in 2020 to try and get this off the ground and get to a point where we can actually get it on the ballot. And it takes time, energy to do that. And it's not an easy process. So if anybody comes at you with that, help them understand it's already a large process to get 412,000 signatures and 5% of 44 counties to sign on a ballot initiative to begin with, let alone raise campaign funds. When you're talking we're talking 20, 30, 40 million dollars to run a campaign. That's a lot of income that you have to do that. So this is not an easy process. You also have to get it approved twice. You have to go and apply once with 1,000 signatures and get it approved. And then you go twice the second time to actually get it on the ballot. There are multiple barriers in the way. Just getting 50% of the vote is not the whole story. Raising that makes it even harder. Raising it to 88 counties makes it even harder. Raising it's so much more than people do not understand. And that's why we need to educate on what it takes to make an initiative like this happen. And that's part of our goal too, is to educate people on what we have to do in order to get this. That's why we're asking for donations. We have to raise those $40 million, plus we have to run this organization. It's all part of the process.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you everybody for your great questions. We will have more time for questions and answers at the end, but we do want to, in addition to talking about how we do need to play defense through August, we have this huge opportunity to play offense in University Heights, right outside of Cleveland, in order to pass ranked choice voting this year. And this happened because the Charter Review Commission there recommended to their city council to put ranked choice voting on the ballot this November and have the people of University Heights then vote on whether to use ranked choice voting in future elections. And so the Charter Review Commission on June 5th, they will be presenting their recommendations, including ranked choice voting, to City Council. And then on June 20th, we expect their city council to vote on whether to put that charter amendment on the November ballot. And so we are going to be focusing everyone in our Northeast Ohio chapter. Thank you, Rami, for correcting. Everyone in our Northeast Ohio chapter will be focusing on building our supporter list in University Heights so that then the ranked choice voting supporters can ask city council members to support ranked choice voting, can go to the June 5th meeting or the June 20th meeting with our elevator pitch. We do our state level and national level pitch trainings you can sign up for on our calendar so that people can know how to talk about ranked choice voting in that quick 30-second to a minute pitch that we do, so that they can go and call city council so that they can show up and give public comment or write op-eds in the Heights Observer and other local publications. And so if you live in and around University Heights or Northeast Ohio, please do join our Northeast Ohio chapter. The link is in our agenda, rtvo.org/NEO, or contact me directly, my email, kherman@rankthevoteohio.org, in order to help, because we have a lot of events and we're going to be planning even more events and ways to take action in and around University Heights. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I just wanted to jump in real quick on letters to the editor because you're talking about University Heights. Over the last couple weeks, the vice president of content at cleveland.com, his name is Chris Quinn, and people who have written letters to the editor, he has sort of polled us over the last few weeks because a lot of people are frightened now about writing letters to the editor because they've been getting, their homes have been targeted. And the Cleveland Plain Dealer, their policy was not to allow anonymous, letters. If you wanted to send a letter in, you had to sign it. And so a lot of people got their friends who wrote letters to the editor to answer Chris Quinn's, survey polling of us, and he changed the policy for content on cleveland.com so that we now can write letters to the editor without fear of repercussion, or you can write something like your initials and you're a resident of Northeast Ohio or Northwest Ohio or whatever, but it still can be some level of anonymity. So that's unfortunate in the world we live in right now, Kyle, but it does help some people.
Yeah, thank you so much for flagging that, Andrew. That is very important. We do encourage you to write letters to editor, but we also want to make sure everybody feels safe when doing so. We have another question in the chat. Sue Miller asked, can we help from Columbus in University Heights? And the answer is absolutely yes. And it doesn't matter where you live in the state. If you have connections to anyone who does live in University Heights, please use your relational organizing skills, reach out to them, let them know that this is happening in their community and that they can sign our online petition page to get more information from us about how they can get involved as well. And this is a great transition over to Parker to talk about our broader volunteer opportunities, because the more you all help statewide, the more the folks in Northeast Ohio can focus on University Heights. Parker?
Hey. As mentioned previously, the three things that we need are volunteers, donors, and endorsements. And as it happens, those are the teams that, as far as I'm aware, need the most people. So for volunteers, we have organizers all around the state who are interested in canvassing, and that is just straight up rolling the snowball, getting us more and more signups to show that we are viable so that we can prove that, yes, we can make a ballot initiative happen. And the more people we have doing that, the more events we can have, the more people we can get, the larger we can grow. Fundraising is a team that's run by Denise, and that is the art of getting donors large and small. It's a skill set that you don't find very often, but when you do, we appreciate them so much. So if you want to learn something new, definitely give it a shot. And finally, endorsements, which is run by Michael Ahern, is a team that is about, well, relational organizing. It's about reaching out to other organizations and seeing if they can help us endorse ranked choice voting and us. And as a result, we can get them to say, yes, we're good. And so they can advertise for us and hopefully move some of their people over here. It's happened to great effect with a few other organizations. Those are the three big areas that I remember offhand.
Thank you, Parker. And we do have more information in the agenda, which we just put back in the chat, along with our donation link, because any donation level, as has been mentioned, helps us to attract larger investments that we're going to need. So we are going to move on to our final Q&A. So please raise your hand or put your questions in the chat. But while we do that, we do have a few upcoming events that we wanted to highlight. Our Southwest Ohio chapter meeting, these are all on our calendar, rtvo.org/calendar, but our Southwest chapter meeting, which is going to be in person in Cincinnati, or you can join virtually on Zoom. It's going to feature the former chair of the Utah Republican Party, Stan Lockhart, who is going to be visiting the first weekend of June to watch the Cincinnati Reds play. And we found this out. We reached out to him and asked if he would meet with us because he is a supporter of ranked choice voting. You may not know that the Utah Republican Party uses ranked choice voting. About 20 cities in Utah use ranked choice voting, and the Republicans there use it and like it. And so Stan is a great advocate who will be talking at our Southwest Ohio meeting. And then we also want to flag our June statewide meeting, which over the summer, we have our meetings on Monday evenings at 7 p.m. because people tend to be busier during the weekends in the summer. But that is going to feature our Grass Tops allies, the bipartisan duo of state reps Gene Krebs and Sean Logan, who are going to be giving us updates on their talks with current and former elected officials around the state. They've been building that Grass Top support, working with us in order to try to prove our viability this summer so that we can attract the investments that we'll need for a statewide ballot initiative in 2024. And so that should be a great conversation as well. And Kristen will be back with even more updates on how the Vote No in August campaign is going a month from now. And then if you haven't been to one of our new volunteer orientations yet, please sign up to join Parker and Andy on Wednesdays or Thursdays at 7 p.m. We also have the national level pitch training, speaker trainings, and letter to the editor parties that you can find on our calendar as well. So lots of ways to get involved. Please help by donating your time or by donating money if you can't give your time. We have this huge defense to play through August, but we're not stopping with going on offense to make all of our elections more free and fair. So we'll stick around for questions, but thank you everyone so much for joining us today.